Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are on the solo cleric in the Goblin Caves today. This is after the change where essentially all items of white rarity or below are allowed into normal games, but all items of green quality or higher are embargoed. This is an interesting little experiment, but the purpose of our discussion today is really to talk about preparing for wipe, things we can be doing right now, and what my general approach is going to be after wipe. So right off the bat, find some nice gloves here. Yeah, take those. I'll enjoy using them this run only, and then putting them in with all of the other great loot that I probably won't get a chance to use before they wipe on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on where you live, what time zone you're in, etc. But yeah, so interesting change. I don't know if they'll leave this in after the wipe period, but it will have big implications for the game if they do. Instead, let's talk about what we do know. The wipe is going to happen this weekend. After the wipe, all character levels will be reset to 0. All blue shards and red shards will be left unchanged, but all character levels will be reset to 0. So we'll be looking to both level our characters again and start accumulating wealth, which is the central, game cycle of a game like Dark and Darker. But right now is an almost zero cost opportunity for you to try out different characters, different classes, and different weapons that you may not have been exposed to in the past. I say zero cost because you're really not bringing a lot of gear in, and you have the opportunity to either play with something you have not played a lot of, or you have a chance to limit test where the classes are right now and how they play into one another. I am in here on Cleric because I just wanted to do some level setting of the Smite build. Generally, I'm more of a Judgment enjoyer on the solo Cleric, but today I'm bringing in Smite to kind of play around with that because it seems to be winning out in the hearts and minds of many clerics. It's the superior option for solo gameplay, and I just wanted to do some limit test fights with it. But setting that aside for a second, so also let's set wealth aside for a second because wealth generation I think is incidental and secondary to unlocking your perk points. So my first objective after the wipe will be to level 2 characters to at least 15. I say 2 characters because traditionally the way I've played this game and enjoyed playing it is I have a character which is really dedicated to solo farming, where I attempt to rat around and accumulate money and wealth, and then I have a character which I generally play for competitive PvP purposes, and sometimes that's a winner and sometimes that's a loser, but I joke that my ranger is where all my money goes to be spent, and my cleric is where I make all of my money to then send to my ranger. That's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually kind of appropriate. I think in starting gear only, cleric is probably the strongest class. Just out of the box, we get a spell book, which is the preferred spellcasting focus. It is also really strong, like just in basic grays, particularly in comparison to what it can do. I think the only thing that can rival it right now is the fighter, and that's due to the nature of second wind being like a single fight I win button in a lot of matchups. It's really strong right now. I think longsword is very interesting right now. I want to play around with it more. I'm terrible with it, but I hope to improve that over the next several days of essentially free limit testing because of this pre-wipe event that they're running right now, which I'm a huge fan of. I think the biggest area of improvement for Dark and Darker today is the new player experience. They need a really healthy on-ramp to keep new players interested and give them an opportunity to really season their skills before being thrown into the general population. So I'd love to see, more effort, more testing, be focused around that. But I think Fighter may be dethroned from their position of strength. We have got a really interesting change coming with the patch, and that change is splitting strength into 2 stats. It's splitting agility into 2 stats, and there's a lot to really unpack there. So right now, if you're a frontliner, you're building strength. Matter of fact, most classes in the game are building strength right now because the additional damage and the additional hit points is really just a great 1-2 punch. So even like rogues and rangers are consistently building strength as kind of a secondary stat behind damage. And this is going to change the calculus around all of that. And I think it's going to weaken the frontliners a little bit. Now, barbs and warriors, fighters will be put to a decision about whether or not they want to invest in damage or hit points. I think it's pretty healthy for the game. And I think that Dex being, I mean, agility being split into two stats, agility and Dex, one which confers movement speed, one which confers action speed, attack speed. I think that's really a healthy change. I think the winners in this overall conversation are the people who don't necessarily invest in either of those. I think Wizard, which is already really strong but rather difficult to play, I think it comes out on top of this because they don't need to invest that much from a stat budget perspective into knowledge. They can now look at pumping vigor, and we may have a tank mage problem here very shortly as a result, but time will tell. So what should you be doing over the next several days? Well, I would be experimenting. I'd be playing with different builds. I'd be playing with different classes that you're not as familiar with. Or I would be spending, time on your main, limit testing how your character will play into these other classes the day of the wipe. Secondarily to that, it's a great time to start refining your overall wealth generation, your development strategy. I'll tell you that in a nutshell. What you should be doing after wipe is you should be, particularly if they leave the gear embargo, some kind of gear embargo in place, I think they may bump that up. If they do leave it in place at all, they'll bump it up to be like greens and lower, in which case your objective is to find well-rolled greens in the first several days of wipe, or blues, well-rolled blues, and even epics during your leveling runs and extracting that with them and then banking them. The economy is going to be really soft for a week or so after the wipe, as people really just don't have money and the price points really haven't settled down. But that'll be changing rather quickly. Go ahead and get good pieces, set them aside. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they leave the no limit in terms of what levels can access the trading post in High Roller. Because that opens up a whole new world of possibilities, and you'll just have to stay tuned for my point of view on what those changes look like. If they, kind of leave them in, it will definitely change the tone of the conversation, I think, a little bit. But, objective number one, let's get to level 15. Let's unlock those perks and then gain access to the trading post, assuming that rule stays in place. Number two is going to be, how do we start developing an economic edge? Or at least maintain with the rest of the overall community, in terms of buying power. To a certain extent, Dark and Dark has always been a little bit about being able to leverage economic warfare against your opponents in the form of better gear. So gaining an edge in the economic warfare aspect is a really good idea. Two things you can be doing that will kind of greatly accelerate that is, and I'll tell you right now, like crafting. The more I look into it, the stronger it looks. If they leave these items the way they are right now at the beginning of the next patch, then just know that the Wolf-clad leggings and the Demon-clad leggings are blue items that are best in slot for a number of different classes. They're incredibly strong, and so putting any amount of time and attention into getting those raw materials, wolf pelts, wolf claws, centaur tails, etc. Really strong strategy. It's going to give you a nice economic boost at the start of the next wipe, assuming they don't make any tectonic level changes in the current terrain of crafting. And lastly, like, how do I level fastest? It's a really easy conversation to have. It's settled science. The best way to make XP is to run crypts and take red portals. Go down, kill as much as possible, loot as much as possible, but at the end of the day, extracting is worth the most amount of XP, period. So I don't know to what degree the majority of the community will kind of be clued in. In the past on wipes, a lot of people weren't going down. It was really easy to even solo or rat onto the second level of the dungeon pretty easily, consistently extracting and gaining really massive XP gains really quickly. I think the word's out on this, and I think you're going to run into a lot of competition on level 2. So good luck and Godspeed in that regard. But if you have to make a choice between going down to level 2, killing some stuff, and then dying, versus taking a blue portal on level 1, just know that extracting is the biggest bump you can get to your XP while leveling. I think that kind of summarizes where my energy is going to be over the next kind of 48, 72 hours. For those of you in the U.S., we are going into the Thanksgiving holiday. Great timing, Iron Mace, in terms of this patch and its release. Nice run. Made a bunch of money there. Not that it's not going to all evaporate in 48 hours, but regardless, That's where my energy and attention is focused. Is doing some free limit testing and learning right now for different classes and different comps. It's a good dress rehearsal for the way our characters will be playing immediately after the wipe when it comes. So it's really important to know that a lot of these characters classes, they don't play the same way when they're fully geared versus when they're kind of in grays. So kind of getting recalibrated to where the gray power level is a worthwhile use of time. And then secondarily, thinking about my leveling strategy. Once again, I'm employing two characters. I'm going to be leveling the cleric as my moneymaker solo grinder. And then I think I may be leveling wizard first this time around. It may be ranger. I don't really know yet. Still haven't settled it out with the rest of my three-man squad. But regardless. So for those of you in the U.S., I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy your time with the family. For those of you who will be grinding, I wish you good luck in your raids to come. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It helps me a ton. We'll see you next time.